This is a story of who we were, how we got here.
Houston, the Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility.
And where we are going.
You've got mail.
So join us as we take history off the page.
Hey everybody, just a quick message today to celebrate the end of our first season here at History Off the Page. You know, back when I started this effort last August, I have to admit I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I figured that setting up a podcast would be a pretty easy thing to do. After all, I give these lectures several times a year, so how hard could it be? All I need to do is just go in front of my laptop, hit the record button, load it up to the internet, voila. Famous last words, right? I have to tell you, it's been quite the learning experience. There's a whole lot that goes into creating a podcast that I'd never thought about before. Now, there's obviously the technical stuff, the recording software, how to edit audio files, upload them to the internet, get them into an RSS feed. There's a whole lot of other kind of interesting things too about it, right? Is my mouth hydrated enough? Am I breathing correctly? How does that affect the audio performance? Am I recording in a room where the audio sounds are going to be soaked up, or am I recording in a room where it's going to sound like an echo and get unprofessional, if you will? There's also been a lot of other interesting challenges. Had to learn a lot about copyright law, how to set up a website and how to run it, which is a whole other ballgame. And of course, the next step in this process is trying to figure out social media. I always thought social media, I understand it. You just, you post something and that's about it. And what I've discovered is there's a whole lot more to it. So as you've probably noticed, I haven't quite figured that one out yet. But I'll be taking on some assistance this fall to help out and to develop it. One of the things that I want to do is to try to give you guys, as listeners, more content. And when I say more content, I mean things like historical photographs, book and movie recommendations, maybe even highlight some places to travel to. So we're going to be working on that over the summer, trying to, again, develop the social media related to History Off the Page to make it a more immersive experience for you. It's also been an adventure from the historical side as well. Each new episode gives me a chance to explore new aspects of history that I may have been aware of, but that I hadn't really spent a lot of time focusing on. Learning about specific figures, specific incidents, trying to find out, okay, when was the first vaccine invented? How did they develop it? How does that compare to inoculation? Right, so this has been a real pleasure. It's a lot of fun, but it's also very time-consuming. So another thing that I'm going to work on over the summer is filling out this content, trying to make the episodes even more detailed and getting into some of those really interesting stories that illustrate some of the major points that we're trying to make. If there are aspects of the 20th century that you want to hear more about, please feel free to message me, and I'll see if I can work them into one of our future podcasts. Anyway, like I said before, I thought this podcasting thing would be easy, that I'd wrap up the whole general overview of Europe in just a couple months, and obviously that's not the case. But we will get there. We'll be back in September with new episodes on the two world wars, on the rise of communism and Nazism, and we're especially going to get into, in separate episodes, the experience of living in Nazi Germany. Why do so many Germans support Hitler? What is it like to live under a communist dictatorship? Why do people support communism? And why do people fear communism? Why is it seen as such a bad thing? Finally, we'll also talk about what happens after World War II. We are living in this moment when there is some dissatisfaction about the way that the world is, but there is also a lot of satisfaction and a lot of pride in the way that Europe has developed since 1945, right? Up until maybe you could say the 1990s in Yugoslavia, obviously what's going on in Ukraine today, there hasn't been a World War III. There hasn't been a repeat of the mistakes, one could argue, of the interwar period. So why is that? What did people get right? What did people get wrong? What are some areas that we look back on that are still causing problems in Europe today? Right, one of the big ones that we'll get into is the development of a multicultural society. How did we get there in Europe? What have the consequences been? What might it portend for the future? What are the issues that people are dealing with today, and where did they come from? So we're going to get into all of this come September, when we'll start having, again, more episodes and regular episodes. Lastly, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to listen to us over the course of the past year. It has really been a wild ride. Set aside the podcast, just real life has been kind of crazy these last 2 years, filled with plenty of events that historians will be talking about for some time. We've had what it seems like several times when the pandemic seemed like it was over, and then it came back, but then it's gone again, and we seem to be coming to a point where it's become endemic. The coronavirus is never going to go away, but we seem to be able to manage it and control it and deal with it in ways that, we haven't since it first emerged. We've also seen, of course, as I mentioned, the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. We've seen financial chaos. We've seen the seeming resurrection of NATO. And on and on. There's all these kind of major historical events that are happening. So as we go through this crazy thing called life, if I can quote the artist formerly known as Prince, I hope you found this exploration of the past useful. The challenges we face as residents of the 21st century are certainly daunting, but they are rarely unprecedented. We have faced environmental, political, economic, and cultural challenges before. And one way or the other, as a society, we have found our way through them. That should be a comforting thought. And at the same time, a reminder of why the study of the past is so important. I hope you'll join us again in the fall as we continue to take history off the page.